we have our first black president, Barack Obama, and there are a lot of parallels between Barack Obama and our first black mayor here in New York, David Dinkins, 25 years ago. Um, 25 years ago, we elected David Dinkins, our first black mayor, and he got 98% of the black vote, and against Rudy Giuliani, who got a lot of votes from whites and Hispanics and Asians and everybody else, but it wasn't enough. A lot of people supported David Dinkins. He was the first black. He was the mayor. And what had happened in New York was everything just collapsed. It just fell apart. I mean, mind you, we were in the middle of the crack epidemic. And crime was through the roof. But Mr. Dinkins' responses were totally ineffective and totally incompetent. I mean, he was one of the worst mayors we ever had in New York City. I mean, we went from 1,500 murders to 2,200 murders. Crack addicts were pretty much running New York City. I mean, crack addicts and crack dealers were pretty much running New York City, and nothing was getting done. I mean, city council had a budget deficit. I mean, and everything was just falling apart. But the black people's response when he first got elected, I remember on Third Avenue they had a big sign on one of the buildings that said Dinkins on top, and people were all praising him and supporting him. But when they started seeing that nothing was getting done 2 or 3 years into his term, they started getting upset with him because crime was through the roof. We had crack addicts. Again, crack addicts were just literally running the city. Drug dealers, drug lords, drug posses were running the black community. I mean, all over New York City, they were pretty much running anywhere. I remember when I was a kid just seeing dope dealers. They were on the train, literally could count their money because they weren't afraid of anything. People were snorting drugs and weren't afraid of it. And this was coming to and from school, just seeing guys just running like this. And the cops were just overwhelmed because they felt they had no support whatsoever. And many of the people in the community felt they had no support whatsoever. And Dinkins' administration it was a total disaster. I mean, the city was it was pretty much on a landslide. I mean, I know he inherited a lot of screwed up stuff from Ed Koch, but it got worse under him. And he just didn't know how to do anything until this situation where this white tourist got killed. I don't know if many of you remember a guy named Brian Watkins, and he was riding the train to, I think it was, yeah, he was riding the train to the U.S. Open. So I remember reading about this in the newspaper when I was a teenager, and these Hispanic youths decided who wanted to go to the club. They didn't have any money, so they decided they were just going to rob people. They got on the E train and they stabbed this white tourist, Brian Watkins, and left him to die. And it wasn't until this white male was killed that Mr. Dinkins decided to go into action. He didn't care about the 2,200 black people and people of color who were being killed. But when this one white man was killed, he decided to go into action. That's when we got this Safe Streets, Safe City campaign. That's when we got community policing, and that's when he decided to go into action. That's when he decided, oh, I want to be a mayor, I want to be an executive. But until then, he didn't really want to do anything. He just let black people kill black people. As long as it was blacks and Hispanics blowing each other away in these drug wars and these turf wars, it was no problem. But once it got below 96th Street, where the white people live, he decided he wanted to do something about it. And when I look at Barack Obama, I see David Dinkins all over again. Barack Obama's whole term has been just a disaster. I mean, his 2 terms have been, people say he was held back by the Congress, but I don't see him wanting to do anything. I mean, I just see him phoning it in. I see him, he comes out here and again, here and now. He doesn't really push economic policy, he doesn't really push political policy, he doesn't push foreign policy. I mean, he just phones it in, like David Dinkins. And if you look at the backgrounds of David Dinkins and Barack Obama, they're pretty much the same. They're Ivy League educated. They're um, esteemed, um, established and esteemed professionals. But when they're like what I call a pedigreed Negro, they have all of these pedigrees and backgrounds. But when the rubber hits the road and it's time to take action, these guys just sit back and they don't know how to do it. I believe really they don't know how to do anything. Well, and they're just afraid to do anything. They say that it's the Congress holding them back. They say it's so holding them back. But I find it odd that other people can get stuff done, but these guys can't get anything done. And here in New York with David Dinkins, the city was just about to collapse. And I look at Barack Obama and I look at the country. It's like it's on its way to collapse. I mean, if you look at the Michael Brown situation, that's the equivalent a of the dogs and hoses in parts of the country during the civil rights period. I mean, when you have military-style response to protesters, that's the equivalent of those dogs and those fire hoses. It's just an update of the dogs and the fire hoses, and we have a president just twiddling his thumbs, just letting the country just fly on autopilot towards crash and burn. I mean, I believe that, like David Dinkins, Barack Obama is going to have to take for somebody white to die for him to do something. I mean, because that's when David Dinkins decided to spring into action. He sprung into action when Brian Watkins, the tourist from, I don't know, I don't remember where he comes from, Idaho, Iowa. It's been 25 years. When that white tourist was killed, that's when our black mayor decided to do something about the Negroes who were literally exterminating black people every week. I mean, it was so bad here in New York 25 years ago that you couldn't even walk down the street. But David Dinkins' response was nothing. He made excuses talking about the budget, this, that, the third, and he didn't do anything. I mean, he did nothing. Just, I mean, we went from 1800 to 1800 1989. I think 1900 or 2000 murders in 1990 to 2200 in 1991, and many of these murders were still unsolved. I mean, if I look at Chicago right now, it's the exact same thing as the David Dinkins situation in New York 25 years ago. I look at Barack Obama, it's the same thing as New York City 25 years ago. What we're seeing is this ineffective and incompetent leadership, and nobody's holding these guys to account. I mean, yeah, they were elected because they were black, but they're not showing that they have the skills needed for being a leader. They're not showing that was David Dinkins' big problem. He could not be a leader. He was a Manhattan borough president. It was like that's basically an office job here in New York. But to show true leadership, to be a mayor, you have to really unite people and galvanize people, and you have to get people to understand things. I mean, you can't. What David Dinkins did, he didn't understand economics. He didn't understand that you can't open businesses where there's crime. He didn't understand that if people aren't safe, they can't go shopping, and if you're not safe, businesses don't feel safe to invest in communities. I mean, if they don't feel safe, they're not going to invest anywhere, and that's what he didn't understand. I mean, New York City's economy was completely in ruins because he was trying to put the cart before the horse. He wanted people to invest in the black community and New York City's economy, but he didn't want to do anything about the crime. He didn't understand how two and two work together. I mean, Rudy Giuliani, as much as many people didn't like him, and in the beginning I didn't like him, but I began to understand that his approaches were functional, and I understood that what he said about you have to fix the crime before you can get the investment. It was a logical sense because if people don't feel safe, then you don't feel safe about opening businesses or building businesses. If the crime isn't taken care of, you can't bring investment and wealth into an area that's just chock full of crime, full of drug dealers and gang members. That has to be dealt with first, and David Dinkins didn't deal with that. He didn't deal with it until a white man was killed. And that's the sad part. That showed me, really, if you I looked at the one term of David Dinkins, and it showed me a lot about how much black people value black life. I mean, here you have your black mayor, and he doesn't value black life at all. He doesn't do anything about black life until a white life is taken, and that's just sad in and of itself. And same thing is happening with Barack Obama. He doesn't want to do anything. He has done nothing for black people in his 2 terms, and he's blamed everything. But the thing is that he's had the executive power to do things for black people. I mean, 98% of black people voted for this man, but we're getting zero result. And then I look at his foreign policy, and he's got John Kerry, one of the most ineffective people as foreign policy, as your Secretary of State. And nobody's ever at fault in the Obama administration, just like no one was ever at fault during the Dinkins administration. And during both administrations, no one was ever at fault. Nothing was ever wrong. Nobody ever made a mistake. Nobody ever took responsibility. And nothing ever got done. New York City, just like America right now, is falling apart because we have no leadership. We have nobody taking the reins, nobody taking responsibility. What we have is a whole blame and shame game being played, the shuck and jive blame and shame game. And this is what happens when you go and get somebody based on their ethnicity rather than qualifications. I mean, yeah, Barack Obama looked good on paper, just like David Dinkins 25 years ago. David Dinkins looked great on paper, but his results pretty much show. And I look at both men, and they're pretty much the same thing. We dealt with this in New York City. The only way we could deal with it was to vote this guy out. I mean, when I was in college, I had made the mistake of voting for David Dinkins. I thought, oh, Democrat, because that was another mistake. When I was younger, I didn't know any better. Oh, vote for the Democrat because he's a black guy, and not looking at his record. But 25 years later, and even I didn't say 10 years later, I was starting to look at his record and going, he lost the election because he didn't do anything for anybody. I mean, the only time he went into action was when that white man died, when Brian Watkins died. That's when David Dinkins decided it was time to go into action. I mean, Central Park Jogger was going on, Central Park 5Ks, all of this stuff was going on under Dinkins' administration. I mean, I remember people just killing each other. Black people were killing each other like roaches, and his response was nothing. And and the sad part was black people had his name on 3rd Avenue on top of a building, celebrating this guy like a hero, when he did nothing heroic for black people. Just like Barack Obama, black people celebrate this man, they put him on a pedestal, they worship him like a god. But what has Barack Obama done for black people? I mean, he promised change for America, and Negro hasn't even got a penny. When you put the parallels between both of them together, and I really want people to go out and do the research on David Dinkins, the mayor of New York, and I want you to do parallels between him and Barack Obama, and you'll see that both of their political policies, even though they're national and local, even though they're both different in being national and local, are the exact same thing, and you're getting the same ineffective results. I mean, I look at how David Dinkins, 25 years ago, how his approval rating plummeted. I think back about that. When his approval rating plummeted, it's plummeting the exact same way Barack Obama's approval rating is plummeting right now. Because I believe, really sadly, in order for Barack Obama to give change to America and give change to black people, is for somebody black, not prominently black, but somebody prominently white, to die at the hands of somebody black, and then he'll do something. Because the sad part is black people don't value anything unless Mr. Charlie does. And that's the only way they're going to go to action. If it offends white people, then black people will do something about it. But if it offends black people won't do anything about it. If black people don't want anything, again, that's that codependent relationship. Unless their white master, slave master, tells them something needs to be done, nothing's going to get done. And it's not unless somebody white dies, I think, sadly, is Barack Obama really going to go into action. So he doesn't really do anything unless somebody white is offended or somebody white has hurt their feelings. Only when his white slave masters go out and tell him America's messed up is he going to go into action. Now, it's nice to have a black president, but I think black people really need to start looking at, not at the skin color, but they have to start looking at the content of their character. That's something we're not really doing. We're looking at oh, he's the prominent black man. So was O.J. Simpson. So was Clarence Thomas. And none of those guys did anything for black people either. And you really have to look at the content of black people's character before you vote for them or you get involved with them. But black people, I look at it, they don't really do that. We didn't do it with David Dinkins here in New York, and on the national scene, we're not doing it with Barack Obama. But the pattern is still the same approach. Voting down the Democratic ticket, that's something I don't do anymore. Um, I woke up from that because I was only a kid back then. I didn't know any better. I just thought, oh, Democrats help black people. Now I understand that neither party really helps black people, and black people have to really, I think black people are going to have to form their own political party if they really want something done. Um, we really have to start looking at things saying, if something doesn't work, we have to do something else. And the parallels between David Dinkins and Barack Obama, I really want you to go out and look at it, because both men are just about the same. I also made the comment on David Carroll's show a while back. I said the same thing about Jimmy Carter. If you look at Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama, they're pretty much the same thing. But you really start to see the parallels between David Dinkins and Barack Obama. And it's those parallels that really are going to, if you look at the parallels there, you can look at the next 8 years or the next 4 years. Because this is my opinion, it may not happen. Hillary Clinton may get the White House in 2016, but I really think that it's going to be Republican who gets the White House because Democrats have pretty much fumbled the football. I mean, they've fumbled the football for the past 8 years. They were given the football after George W. Bush screwed it up, and because he really fumbled a lot of footballs there too after it. And now Barack Obama, he fumbled the football from day one. So I think the defense is going to. I think the Republicans are going to get the football. I don't think Hillary Clinton's going to get in. And if you look at the Giuliani situation, that's pretty much what's going to happen to black folks because we have not done a good job of looking out for ourselves. We keep supporting people because they're black, not because they act in our best interest. And black people have to start looking at their economic situation, their political situation, and trying to find people who have good content of character to look out for black people and black issues. And that's something we really need to do. And we really need to start changing our approaches to politics and law. And it's got to change because seeing these parallels is the same thing over and over. And black people, we've been doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result for 50 years with this civil rights struggle. And that's insanity. It's time for a new approach again. As I've been saying, it's time to do things differently. And it's time to get out of the box. That's all I have to say for this video. And comment, rate, and subscribe.